If you ask most people to name the top 10 or even 20 characters, it's not a stretch to say most would not include Plastic Man on the list. It's not because they don't like Plastic Man. Most outside of the core DC fanbase have probably never heard of Plastic Man. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that you can always submit questions, comic book history ideas, and feedback in the comments or tweet me at comicsgls. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe. We upload comic book and superhero content weekly. Okay, on with our story. Patrick Eel O'Brien, using the codename Plastic Man, first appeared all the way back in 1941, over a decade before he became a DC Comics character. Plastic Man was created by Jack Cole and found his way into the pages of an anthological title published by Quality Comics called Police Comics, which he starred in for 102 issues with classic lines like, "Great guns, I'm stretching like a rubber band." The owner of Quality Comics, Everett Arnold, picked up Cole, known for his comedy, and tasked him with creating a character in the same vein as Will Eisner's The Spirit, and thus Plastic Man was born. Cole wanted to call him India Rubber Man, but inspired by a nascent yet already booming plastics revolution, Everett Arnold convinced him to call his character Plastic Man. 2 years later, Quality Comics gave Plastic Man its own title. This was due in part to wartime rations on paper, coupled with Eisner's ownership dispute with Quality over titles like Police Comics and Hit Comics. The idea was to move the popular character over to his own title to avoid paying page rates to Will Eisner. Interestingly, the first 3 Plastic Men were not published by Quality, they were published by Vital Publications. They had some extra quota to spare in their paper ration quota. In the 1950s, Plastic Man was Quality's second best-selling title, selling over 400,000 per month. Eventually, Jack Cole left Plastic Man in the hands of other Quality creatives to work on a strip for a magazine called Playboy. It was in 1956, shortly after their Frederick Wortham trials that ravaged the industry and brought about the collapse of American News Company, which was Quality's distributor, that the only viable remaining distributor was Independent News, part of National Periodicals and owner of DC Comics, and they bought Quality Comics. For details on why this came to be, check out my How DC Saved Marvel video in my history playlist. DC Comics only continued with titles like Blackhawk, G.I. Combat, Heartthrobs, and Robin Hood Tales. It wasn't until 1966 that DC relaunched Plastic Man. His first appearance in DC Comics is House of Mystery number 160 from July of 1966. So let's talk about the man himself. Eel O'Brien was regularly engaged in a life of crime. During one such caper, he was wounded at Crawford Chemical Works plant, and some of the chemicals got into his gunshot wound. O'Brien escaped and stumbled his way into the Rest Haven Monastery, and the monks there took him in. When he recovered, he discovered that the chemicals transformed him into a human rubber band. The newly reformed O'Brien decided to become a crime fighter, so he put together an iconic costume, red suit and yellow belt and wraparound sunglasses. He would join the local police force and later the FBI. Plastic Man later took on his sidekick, the man who cannot be harmed, former Arkham inmate Woozy Wink. Phil Foglio's revamp in the 80s with his miniseries changed origin to where he was never rehabbed by mysterious monks, but this was restored in even later retellings. In 1960, the Elongated Man first appeared in Flash comic book as a supporting character. Julius Schwartz, editor at DC at the time, said he'd never have used such an unwieldy name if he'd known DC owned the rights to Plastic Man. Over at Marvel Comics, Stan Lee created and then published Fantastic Four #1 in 1961, which is the first time we saw Mr. Fantastic, old Stretch as Ben Grimm calls him. But from this timeline, you can see that Plastic Man was the first of these characters with similar powers. One of the things that set Plastic Man apart from Elongated Man and Mr. Fantastic is his comedy and the comedic roots that Jack Cole brought to the character. So in 1966, DC revived the character and tried to make him as funny as Jack Cole had in the Golden Age, but it fell sort of flat and the book was canceled after 2 short years. With a power set that allows you to take almost any shape or stretch almost indefinitely to anything that O'Brien's mind could conceive, you can see how he would wind up in some rather hilarious situations. In the 70s, another revival of the character came in the form of his Brave and the Bold appearance by, this time, Plaz, as he's known to his fans, fell in love with Ruby Rider and was miserable because of it. Throughout his career, Plastic Man has been a member of the All-Star Squadron, Freedom Fighters, and even joined the Justice League starting in 1998's JLA 16. During one mission with the Justice League of America, the team traveled 3,000 years back in time to visit Atlantis of old. During the mission, Plastic Man was ripped apart and basically survived on the bottom of the ocean in little pieces, and 3,000 years later, back in the present, it was Batman and Firestorm will help piece them back together. That should give you an idea of the amount of power that he has to be able to survive 3,000 years in pieces. In the follow-up event to Infinite Crisis, a younger version of Plastic Man appeared in Teen Titans. We later learned that this is Plastic Man's son, the aptly named Offspring. Plastic Man joined the Justice League again in Len Wein's run on Justice League of America in 2009. During Blackest Night, his heart was ripped out by a resurrected Vibe when the Black Lantern Corps rises, but because of his unique cellular physiology, he's able to survive, and it's that same physiology that also makes him vulnerable to extreme temperatures. And in 52 week 43, Plastic Man origin is once again retold by both Mark Waid and Ethan Van Sciver. In the modern age, Plastic Man has been the goofball and jokester of the Justice League, and according to Van Sciver himself, the Justice League's link to the underworld. He continues to be a supporting character even in Rebirth, where Batman helped release him with Mr. Terrific and Scott Snyder's Dark Days of the Forge. Plastic Man has really never enjoyed the fame and notoriety of A-list heroes like Batman and Wonder Woman, but he remains a favorite of giants in the industry like Art Spiegelman, Alex Ross, Grant Morrison, and even Frank Miller. In addition to nearly 80 years of publication history, Plastic Man is no stranger to other forms of media as well, dating all the way back to 1967. In 1979, the Plastic Man comedy adventure show debuted right after Super Friends on ABC's Saturday morning cartoons. It was a short-lived live-action segment allowing Taylor Marks, the pseudonym for Mark Taylor, to become the first person to play a live-action version of Plastic Man. Then, partly to bolster this TV spot, he appeared in a DC Comics anthology title called Adventure Comics. Outside of the animated series in the 70s and early 80s, multiple attempts have been made to put Plastic Man on screen. In 1991, Spielberg's company Amblin got the movie rights from WB to Plastic Man, and a live-action film put in development in 1992. This was to be the feature film debut of Brian Spicer as director. Interestingly, Spielberg currently has another quality comics title in development, Blackhawk. Anyway, the mid-90s Plaz script was written by the Wachowskis, who you may know from The Matrix. In this version, Plaz is Daniel O'Brien, and his love Susan was the one who made his tissues malleable via a polymerization process. The Wachowskis revived their script in 2003, which is the same year WB first wanted to make an Aquaman movie. They did this after Speed Racer failed miserably at the box office. Jim Carrey, Bruce Campbell, and Keanu Reeves were all up for the role, but it ultimately fell by the wayside. In 2013, rumors floated around that David Tennant was being tapped to play Plastic Man in one of the Justice League movies. He was intended to be comedic relief, much in the same way Ant-Man provides that for the Avengers. In 2017, Kevin Smith announced that he wrote a Plastic Man animated script that he pitched to Jeff Johns, and we don't really know where that went. Finally, in October of 2018, rumors abounded and were made official in December of the same year that Warner Media once again announced that there's a Plastic Man movie in development and even a screenwriter in Amanda Adoko. As of this recording, no actor has been cast as Plastic Man, so let me know in the comments who you'd pick. Would it be David Tennant, Andy Samberg, someone else? Whether or not this film project sees its way all the way through the development, you are now armed with all the comic book knowledge and the origin and history of Plastic Man that you need. As always, thank you for watching and subscribing. If you have questions, comments, things I might have missed, definitely let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to talk with y'all. This is Jesse here with JLS Comics, and I will see you in the next video.